from Rixie. This is Debuff, and I'm your host, Steve Skeels. Today, I'll be talking about the NextGen console launch, Genshin Impact's 1.1 update, and Marvel's Avengers quickly dying. The next-gen consoles are finally here, and the launch has been pretty huge. While neither company has officially revealed the number of consoles sold thus far, the Xbox website has a post saying that this is the biggest launch in Xbox history. 7 years ago, they also said that the Xbox One was their biggest launch, with more than 1 million units sold in the first day. Sony could tout the same thing, with over 1 million PS4s reportedly being sold the first day in North America alone. So if this launch is even bigger for Xbox, then I'd have to say the same should be true for the PS5, as it's the successor to the highest-selling console of this generation. Unfortunately, the limited stock has been troubling for some people, and the focus on online ordering has made it very difficult for people to pick up a console if they missed out even earlier on during the pre-orders. Of course, bots are always a big issue, claiming consoles as soon as they are posted on retailer websites, just to resell them on eBay later. That type of thing sucks, but even despite those, the retailers themselves are not really set up for this kind of traffic, and they experience a pretty big rush with people trying to get a console within the first minute of it being back in stock. This has, of course, caused a lot of frustration with people trying to get a console and just to have it basically become sold out as they're trying to check out. And there's been some technical issues as well, with some places like Walmart restocking multiple times and just having it crash for many users trying to make a purchase. The whole website would go down, giving them errors, and there were even some odd cases of the buttons basically not working, not letting them click purchase when they're trying to get that item in their cart. It's just been a mess. But of course, these things happen, and it's definitely not unusual for a console launch. Many of us will just have to wait, just like we did for pretty much any other console launch that I've been a part of, at least. The Switch itself, a couple years ago, was a big deal. Trying to get those took quite a bit of time if you didn't see it by chance in the store or camping out on websites like Amazon. It definitely took a while to find one. But this time, maybe it's not such a bad thing. There have been some issues with the new consoles, and I'm not talking about the people that were blowing vape clouds into their Xbox Series X's so that it made it look like it was smoking. There's been some actual problems. Users have reported issues with the Xbox Series X disk drive, claiming that there are strange buzzing and clicking noises coming from the drive, or even that the drive will stop taking disks entirely. Worse than that, many have had their Xbox Series X's essentially become useless, with the console constantly shutting off on its own after trying to start up a game. It does sound like the cases vary, and some people have been able to fix these problems themselves, and it does sound like a lot of this could be fixed with a software update, but it's still scary for a brand new console. For the PS5, I'd unfortunately say it sounds like it's been a bit worse. There have been reports of the console going into a storage rebuild and then end up crashing before it can complete. Typically, this is caused when returning from rest mode for some reason, but the issue has gone and escalated for some people, causing the console to become entirely bricked. Others have reported all kinds of crashes, from the data transfer feature causing problems for them, to just internal power issues causing the console to not start up at all. Some of the major issues don't appear to be very widespread, but the list of problems right now is pretty big. Luckily, most of this does sound like it can be fixed with a software patch as well, but it's a little bit tough, especially if some people are having problems with the internal power, as that sounds like not something that they're going to be able to fix very easily. I'll also add that these kind of things happen with every console launch, just like the consoles being sold out, and I'd say they're somewhat expected. Manufacturers can't do the kind of testing that some people might expect, and with over 1 million consoles out in the wild, it's definitely going to come with more problems than just running some tests at their office buildings. But aside from the issues that people are having, the consoles themselves are doing really well. As expected, it seems like everyone loves how fast they are and how well games are running. The PlayStation 5's DualSense seems to be getting quite a bit of attention, and of course, the Xbox Quick Resume feature has been highly praised pretty much everywhere. There are already some speed comparisons between the two consoles, with some tests showing the PlayStation 5 to be slightly better running games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But they're pretty comparable, and I'd guess that the Xbox is still going to win out with some games, since it's the more powerful console on paper. In the end, I don't think it's really going to make a difference. Maybe we'll see some impressive loading or whatever with some of the first-party games, but the multi-platforms are probably going to be pretty consistent across both. Unfortunately, like I said last week, there really aren't many next-gen exclusives yet, but the new games that launch with both consoles have been reviewing well. Still, there's nothing that would really make anyone feel as though they need to upgrade now, other than maybe Demon's Souls, which again is a remake of a PlayStation 3 game. Everyone's saying it's great, but it's not really anything new, other than the updated graphics and some tweaks that they've made to the game. I did not pick up a console myself, but I'm sure I'll get at least the PlayStation 5 one of these days. Ideally, I'll be waiting until after the early bugs are worked out, and there's a few more titles I actually want to pick up with it. But I hope everyone's enjoying their console. I know quite a few people that have gotten their own now, and things look to be going pretty well, other than some problems that appear to be pretty minor, though we'll have to see how it all plays out in the coming weeks when people actually start working these consoles pretty hard. Genshin Impact is a free-to-play gacha that I've been pretty addicted to, for better or worse. I talked about it when it launched at the end of September, and since then, it has had some small content added, but this 1.1 update is the first large addition to the game, so it's been kind of a big deal for those of us who have been waiting for more. One of the main additions here are the new characters added, which they've been doing pretty regularly, but as it's part of the 1.1 update, I'll talk about it here. This includes a new 5-star Hydro Bow user named Child, who you meet in the story but was unavailable to play as until now. The other is a 4-star cat girl named Diona, who is a Cryo Bow user. They're both pretty cool new additions to the already large roster, with Child being the most interesting of the two due to his ability to create water daggers, as opposed to solely fighting with a bow. Unfortunately, it does get pretty hard to level new characters if you've already poured a lot of resources into the ones you have, so I don't know that I'll be going for either of these right now, but as always, if you want to check them out, you can try them out in the test run event. They also officially announced 2 other characters that will be coming later, but they won't be available until this banner's over and these guys are added next month. I do think the characters are cool, but really what we've needed is more content to actually play through, and we got quite a bit of it here. There's still no 3rd region yet, and that will be coming soon, but I think they've added a good amount of content to tide people over for at least a little bit while longer. This update added new quest lines that continue the story and follow from pretty much exactly where we left off on 2 fronts. One that will bring us to the Jade Chamber, a flying palace in the sky, and the other continuing Child's story and the dealings of the shadowy Fati organization. This includes a pretty sweet boss battle, which I think is much cooler than anything that's been in games so far, so that's pretty nice. There are also some smaller quests and events going on too, but not too much of note there. Really, my favorite new feature added in this update is the reputation system. There's been daily quests and things to do pretty much all the time, but it's been kind of small content that are quests take a couple minutes, as well as a couple dungeons that don't take very long either. But I think the reputation system adds another place to go and find things to do for more rewards, including some small quests and bounties that maybe aren't really anything special, but I think it's pretty sweet. It adds stuff to check in on and keep you busy for a while, though I do hope they expand it a bit more later. There's also been some new items added to the game that they're calling gadgets in their press release. Some of these are pretty cool, like an item that allows you to eat food without having to go into the menu, or a pocket that allows you to store wind currents to drop wherever you need when exploring in the overworld. There are some neat features to check out there, and there's tons of items that sound like they'll have their uses. There are also a lot of other small updates and bug fixes that you might want to take a look at, but nothing too intense, other than one that I want to talk a bit about. They had a small change to world damage scaling that has caused people some frustration. It essentially made it so things like your own fire or electricity damage deals actual damage to yourself now, instead of barely giving you a tickle as it previously did. They've fixed it a bit now, but it's still a bit difficult to get used to, as I feel like there are some characters affected pretty heavily by this. Other than that, I do think this has been a really good update, and I've been enjoying the game. I've got my own issues with it, but it's free to play, so I can't be too upset about it. I think I was a bit too easy on it when it first came out, but I still stand by what I said. I've had a great time, and I think more people should check it out. It's fun, you don't really have to spend money on it if you don't want to, but it definitely does become a grind a bit later, and if that's not your thing, then maybe just play for a bit and see if it's worth at least sticking with until you get to the grind. Either way, I'm going to keep on with it, and I hope the next updates are even better than this one. The last topic for today is Marvel's Avengers. The game pretty much came and went, with it doing alright in reviews, but mostly because people enjoyed the campaign and found the rest of it at least decent, mindless fun. The game was always getting criticism ever since its first trailer. It came out and I think it was pretty much torn up immediately for the weak gameplay showcases, characters that looked like knockoffs of their MCU counterparts, and eventually the game was pretty much ridiculed for being a games as a service. This games as a service model has become a very popular choice for developers recently, since it allows them to release a single game and keep people playing, and ideally spending money for months or years after release. However, people don't always like it. Some games make it work, like Destiny, and others don't, like Anthem. The problem is, some of these games come out with issues and lackluster content that make it hard for players to want to stick with, as the developers promise to make things better. I just feel like the devs, or probably more likely the publishers, see the success of some of these games and think, well, we can do that if we add a new skin, and I'm sure people will love it. But what they forget is that almost all of these games have had their issues, and some continue to have issues. Even games like Destiny probably have a lot of problems that the people that play it every day are going to be quick to tell you about. And this can be an especially hard pill to swallow when it's a $60 purchase and you might get tired of it after a couple weeks when it's supposed to be something that you want to stick with for many, many more weeks than that. But on the topic of Marvel's Avengers itself, it's been criticized for its lack of content, grindy loot-based gameplay loop, and button-mashy combat that just gets pretty boring, so you're not going to want to keep going through that loop. And since those are all basically the core of the game, it's been a lot of trouble for them. I'm not saying it's a bad game. Again, it reviewed decently. It's just not something that people are going to want to stick with, which is exactly what's happening. The Marvel's Avengers player base has been dropping off rapidly, with its recent concurrent player count dropping by about 96%, averaging less than 1,000 players in November so far. Crystal Dynamics also reported a $50 million loss for the quarter that they launched the game in, so clearly it hasn't been doing as well as they hoped. Now, I'd say the game did well by many standards, selling about 3 million copies, but as some are estimating that it may have cost them up to about $200 million to make, not to mention whatever the license cost, it's clear that 3 million copies just doesn't cut it for them. Honestly, hearing about this just makes me sad. I wanted the game to do well, and I think everyone knows the Avengers is a really hot property right now, thanks to the MCU, so it's just a bit disappointing that they couldn't find a way to make this work. Unfortunately, I think this game came out a bit too late. Maybe some years ago it would have been a lot better, but I think in a perfect world it would have been a different game entirely. Games that focus on a single hero and are mostly single-player based, something like Spider-Man and the Arkham series, are awesome. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to make a great story-focused game and not go with this games as a service model that I feel like many people are going to drop off of if there's nothing gripping, I guess, to keep them there. You can take a game, make it multiplayer, have some microtransactions, whatever, but it just feels like they set out to make a Destiny and they basically just built around that idea rather than coming up with something and maybe adding that games as a service to the side. Really felt like they could have focused a lot more on the campaign and maybe it would have been different just in that regard, whereas I think people talked about the campaign just because they had to play through that, and afterwards everyone was just on the multiplayer and the grind. Didn't sound very awesome to me, and I know some people are still out there enjoying it, but I don't know what's going on with this game. I'm hoping they can turn it around. They said that they want to, but just like Anthem, this game sounds like it's pretty much going to be dead now. Ideally, Crystal Dynamics can learn from it and maybe make something more enjoyable to play in their next outing. Or maybe Disney's going to take that Marvel's license and just bring it over somewhere else. Debuff is hosted by me, Steve Skeels, edited and mixed by Mason Carlton. Follow us on Instagram at DebuffPod. That's DebuffPod. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.